Welcome to the Awakened Anesthetist podcast. I'm your host, Mary Roberts. I'm a certified anesthesiologist assistant living and working outside of Kansas City, Missouri. I created this podcast to give CAAs across the nation a place to come together and awaken to our profession's unique ability to create a life by design rather than default. That process can start by simply listening and engaging with this podcast. By doing so, you're already changing what's possible for CAAs, for you, for me, for all of us. I'm so thankful you're here. Let's jump into this episode and see what we can do together. Hello, all my fellow CAAs, CAA students, and anesthetist colleagues. I am your host, Mary Jean, and welcome to our process series. These process episodes are meant to expand our collective understanding of what a CAA can be and do, and move us all in the direction of creating our life by design rather than default. I am so excited to get to create these for us because these episodes are a direct overlap of two things I love: the power of my CAA profession to create a life by design and storytelling. So let's start this interview, like all things medical, with a quick timeout. Jenn Stever is our current 2023 Quad A President. That's the American Academy of Anesthesiologist Assistants, our national organization, if you're new to that term. Jenn graduated from AA school at Emory University in Atlanta in 2006, and she currently practices in the state of Atlanta. She works clinically 2 days a week. She has a 12-hour day and then an 8-hour day, and she works specifically in cardiac anesthesia. She's also an adjunct professor with the Emory University AA program, and she's been doing that since 2007. My conversation with Jenn is going to expand any CAAs, including myself before I spoke with her, who don't feel like they know much about our national organization, the Quad A, or the work that it's doing, or how our elected president functions within that organization. Our conversation's also going to expand any CAAs who want to get involved more politically but don't know where to start. And I think this conversation is going to expand anyone who sees themselves one day as a future Quad A president and wants to hear the story of how Jenn found her own way to the Quad A presidency. So without further ado, welcome Jenn to the Awakened Anesthetist.
Hi, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I'm really excited to get to talk to you because talking to you is like a 1.5 year dream in the making. I sat down and I was like, man, what I really love to share with, the CA community on a larger scale. And I was like, I want to hear the behind the scenes of our Quad A president and who that person is and how they got there. So the first question that I give to every guest is to get to know you as a person as opposed to just, a CAA. So I would love to hear about your upbringing and your cultural background.
It's really funny. I'm probably one of the only CAAs practicing in the country who can say, I was born and raised in South Mississippi. So I am originally from Gulfport, Mississippi. I grew up in South Louisiana and South Mississippi, which I get all the time, like, how did you end up as an AA if you're from two states that don't have AAs? So it's a pretty fun way to get to know people. So my random fact of trivia that I always tell everybody is I was a poker dealer at a casino in Biloxi before I went to AA school. So while I was an undergrad at LSU and the University of Southern Mississippi, I dealt Texas Hold'em in a casino.
I love that. That is a great little fact.
It's my random fact of trivia. I know all the ranking of poker hands and I can deal Texas Hold'em.
Love it. So yes, I would love to hear how you first found the CAA profession if you came from a state that didn't and still does not have CAAs.
Right. Well, Mississippi is an interesting state. Mississippi was the 50th state to license PAs. So, and it was in the mid 90s when they licensed PAs. So we grew up, there were nurses and there were physicians, and we knew nothing about anything in between. So it was funny after I finished my undergrad and my postbac training, I couldn't decide if I wanted to be a physician or maybe I want to be a PhD. So I actually moved to Atlanta and I was working at Emory as a research tech. And one of the other research labs next door to mine was Allison Folks, who is a practicing CAA now. She was actually applying to AA school while we were both working in the lab. She was a year ahead of me. And so I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. And while I was working in the lab, I was also a nanny for two little girls part-time, and their mom just completely happenstance played tennis with Emory's chief anesthesia resident at the time.
Oh my goodness.
It's completely random. And so one night I was sitting at their house, going through I think I was studying to take the MCATs. And Dr. Faye Evans, who was the Emory chief resident at the time, comes blowing in like a tornado that she still is to this day. And she's like, I heard you don't know if you want to go to med school or PA school. And I'm like, yeah, I'm really trying to decide. And she's like, no, you're going to come with me and let me show you what you're going to do. And I'm like, okay, where are we going? So literally 2 days later, I was in scrubs at the Emory ORs, learning about anesthesia. So through my colleague in another research lab and the Emory chief resident at the time is how I found out about the AA program at Emory.
Huh. Oh my goodness. Is that normal for an anesthesiologist in Atlanta to be such a champion of CAAs? Like, I'm surprised she wasn't encouraging you to go to, become an anesthesiologist.
Right. And so that was the really interesting thing. And I think Atlanta's got this unique culture that everybody's so familiar with AA practice. So it's not this kind of foreign concept that it might be to physicians in Mississippi and Louisiana who have no idea what a practicing AA does or can do.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, she's like, let me just show you this other option. And I was like, oh, okay. And in my mind, 20 years ago now, as painful as it is to say that, I think I found it to kind of be the best of both worlds, the best of PA school and the best of medical school kind of combined together.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea of learning to be really good at a specialty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. I think that's one of the strengths and also weaknesses of the CAA profession is that if you want to give anesthesia, you become an expert quite quickly. And if you find out, unfortunately, during your course of CAA school that you don't love anesthesia, you can't do anything else with the degree.
And I have made that point so many times to people. And so I talk to a lot of students early on in their career or even prospective students. And I'm like, this is something you've really got to like,
Mm-hmm.
and if this is something that you're not passionate about, it's okay to say that you're not, because it's not for everybody, as we all know.
Sure.
The operating room, it's a unique environment that's not suited for everyone. And that's cool because I am not suited to be an ophthalmologist and look at eyeballs all day.
Mm-hmm.
So I bow down to the people who are.
Tell us first I want to know, how did you make that about face to go to CAA school? Were you kind of already teed up because you were just about to take the MCAT, so you had all of the prereqs, or was it a 6-month wait to get in? Or
No, I was right at kind of the application point because everything at that time was kind of lined up. PA schools were applying at the same time. Med schools were kind of applying at the same time. So I had all of the prerequisites. So after I did my shadowing, I talked to some other people. I really kind of tried to do my due diligence. And a good friend of mine at the time was a peds resident. And I was like, do you think I'm going to get bored doing anesthesia every day? And his response was, you don't think you're going to get bored doing well baby checks every day either? And I was like, well, that's a fair point. I see what you're saying.
Uh-huh. Wow. So it all just kind of truly was meant to be for you. Just one thing led to next. Tell us about CAA school and what it was like for you. Did you love it right away? Share.
I think it's so interesting, the routes that we all take to get where we are. So we've all had classmates from different backgrounds and things like that. And it really is, as the Emory program director always says, the proverbial, you're drinking from a fire hose. And you're just like, holy cow, I did not realize that I had to know this much about this. And I still remember that first semester of taking physics. And I was just like, what have I gotten myself into?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like physics as an undergrad, and now I'm having to do graduate school physics. Oh my gosh. But, I think one of the unique things about CAA school is you form such close bonds with your classmates, and you're kind of all in it together. And you just form like this tight knit little community. And we're like, all right, here we go. We're all going to get through this together, which is always such a gratifying experience. And to date myself, for anyone who has been to the Emory AA program, when I was a first year student, we still had pig lab.
Oh,
so
like dissecting a pig or intubating a pig?
Doing anesthesia for the pig.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
Yes. I can intubate a pig. I can.
That's your second claim to fame story.
Exactly. So you're like, well, this is a skill that's going to get me far in life. But you got really familiar with using a Miller blade because you have to use a Miller blade for a pig.
Oh, interesting. I interviewed my dad, actually, who is a CAA. He just retired. He was in the second class out of case. And he was offering that he could see how much more knowledge you had to take in as a CAA going through school currently, like in present day, than he needed to take in when he was going through CAA school, which at that time was an undergraduate program. He was just, the wealth of knowledge has just expanded and expanded and expounded. And it's just truly that fire hose of information coming at you.
It's really remarkable. Even the change just, in the time that you and I have been practicing, the changes that we've seen. Propofol, when I was a student, was still unpatented and you had to have a reason. It was thiopental or, well, my patient's young and they have a history of nausea and this and that, and maybe you could get propofol. And rocuronium was the same way. Instead of thiopental and sucks for everyone. So even just that slight change, and now we've seen Sugamidex and dexmedetomidine and all of these things that we didn't have 20 years ago. And even the surgical procedures have changed so much.
So true. Yeah. And just what you're expected to, the knowledge that you're expected to be able to spew out so quickly because you go from learning in the classroom to clinical education and performance of actual anesthesia skills. Like it is, again, another wonderful strength and weakness is that you have to take it all in quickly, which is wonderful because a lot of people go into anesthesia are visual and you get to hear it and then do it and see the drugs in action. And then also, you do kind of understand quite quickly if this isn't for you, if you can't make those quick leaps.
Exactly. Exactly.
Did you take a job in Atlanta right out of school? Did you find a place that you fell in love with, or tell us about that first job?
I did. Well, I'm still at my first job, believe it or not.
Really?
I am one of those few people that found a place and stuck with it. Yeah. So as I graduated, I was in kind of a nice sweet spot in the mid 2000s where there was an anesthetist shortage. So the signing bonuses were nice back in the day. I was at that nice little sweet spot before the housing collapse in 2008.
What was your signing bonus back in the day? I'm just interested for comparison.
Emory did a nice job of reimbursing our tuition.
Oh, very good.
Over the course of the 2.5 years, gosh, back then I want to say tuition was $30,000
a year.
I think it was total.
Oh my.
35?
I'm not sure. That sounds very low, but
okay.
Good for you if it was.
No, I may be wrong about that. It may be a little bit, but it was only so like it wasn't your full loan amount. It was just the tuition.
I see. I got you.
So take all that other stuff off the top. So it was that for a 3-year commitment. And so I was like, oh, I can work here for 3 years to pay off a substantial portion of my debt. Sure.
Yeah.
And part of that signing bonus was to work on the cardiac service. So, which at first I always thought I was a peds kind of gal and was going to end up doing pediatric anesthesia. And I probably would have, but there wasn't a pediatric job at the time. So I started doing cardiac and I really got into it over the course of time. And at first I split my time between general surgery and cardiac. And then over the course of time, just gravitated more and more to the cardiac side. So, and that's where I still am, cardiac anesthesia.
Wow. Very cool. Okay. Now I would love I would love to hear actually just a picture of what it's like to be a CAA in Atlanta, because I think this leads into my next question, which is how did you get involved in the Quad A? I'm from Cleveland originally, but now I live in Missouri, and that's a newer program, a newer state, and there's definitely a newer feel to where I am and what I'm doing here. I came from Cleveland, and you're in Atlanta, which are the two long established CAA states. So I'm just wondering if, you kind of had mentioned that CAA profession is very robust down there, but, what's it feel like in terms of the politics of being a CAA in Atlanta?
It's really interesting. For probably the first 15 years or so that I was practicing, we were all just anesthetists. There was not a big differentiation between CRNAs and CAAs. Every once in a while, you would meet someone who had some stronger opinions or felt like practice models would be a little different, but we all kind of work together. I always tell everybody when I'm talking to prospective students, or even as part of the Quad A, the very last function before lockdown in 2020, I had a baby shower at my house for one of the CRNAs who I work with. She was about to have twins. And that was our last big function. I probably had 50 people at my house. They were MDs, CAAs, CRNAs, and the whole gamut of anesthesia providers, which was really nice. I think things on a national level have started to creep down to the state level, from the national organization, with more of a push for independent practice, more of a push for more of some of these kind of extreme political views. Do I see those on a daily basis when I'm working? No. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can all as CAAs tell our lawmakers is we do the same job. We're friends. I take over rooms from CRNAs all the time. CRNAs take over rooms from me all the time. And we work very well as a cohesive team with the physicians. So I think in Atlanta, for the most part, we have such a good collegial working environment.
That's good to hear. It's tricky. I mean, it is an extremely tricky situation. And there is the political level of, CRNA, CAA, interpersonal dynamics. And then there's the actual boots on the ground, the people you're working with.
Exactly. And the people you work with on a day-to-day basis don't care about the political aspect of things. It's just not kind of what we all got into this to do. We're not political science majors. We're here to take care of patients and advocate for healthcare and for good public health policy.
Sure. Yeah. Well, on that note, how did you find your way to the Quad A? Were you always involved? Did you kind of move up the ranks?
It's interesting. I was just kind of go with the flow for the first few years of my career. I paid my dues. I contributed to the legislative fund, but I never saw myself really getting into the national organization and becoming more politically involved. To go back to when I was applying for anesthesia school, we've all seen the nice little map of the states we could practice in. And okay, these are the blue states and these are the states where we can't practice in. Well, when I was investigating AA school or researching it and applying, Louisiana was actually a state where we could practice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like, okay, cool. I'm already established in Atlanta. When I was deciding where I was going to go to school, it was, of course, Emory or Case Cleveland. I'm from South Mississippi, so that whole snow thing that you guys have going on was going to be a problem. So it's like, Atlanta it is. So I show up super gregarious in 2004, and I'm ready to go, and I'm going to move back to New Orleans after I graduate and be closer to family. And all of a sudden, the map is now different, and Louisiana is no longer blue. I'm like, sorry?
Yeah. Excuse me.
Excuse me. Where did Louisiana go? And everybody was like, oh, Louisiana, that's a big problem. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, well, Louisiana is actually the only state where it pretty much says in the law who can and cannot practice anesthesia. And I was like, well, that's kind of garbage, but okay, I live in Atlanta. I'm happy here. So on my merry way I went. And after I'd gotten settled in my career, I was happy. I slowly started taking on little projects. I got involved on a state level with the Georgia Academy of Anesthesiologist Assistants. And so that opened a few more doors. And I was at the American Society of Anesthesiologists national meeting. And I want to say we were in Boston that year. And I was at the committee for the anesthesia care team. And the chair of that committee at the time started talking. And I was like, I'm sorry, I know that Cajun accent. And who's this Cajun accent doc talking about how great AAs are? I need to know this person because we speak the same language. And it was Dr. Craig DeLanzac from Louisiana. And I said, well, Dr. DeLanzac, I said, I hear all this stuff about Louisiana. And he's like, let me tell you about Louisiana, because I was involved in it. And so he took me kind of through the whole story of how in Louisiana, there was actually a bill for AA practice. It was guns blazing, sailing through. This isn't going to be a problem until the day that it wasn't.
Uh-huh.
And the backroom politics played their part. The AA bill did not pass. And not only did the AA bill not pass, they passed a law that actually defined who could provide anesthesia in Louisiana. If anybody would like to Google it and read it, it's an interesting read. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, this is really just, it doesn't make any sense to me. And what can we do?
Yeah.
And so from there, I started getting a little bit more nationally involved and kind of creeping along and working with some people in Georgia and then different states and, the people I know through the educational network. And so finally, a friend of mine was like, the time has come. You need to run for the board of directors and sit on the board of directors. And at the time, I was actually the president of the GAAA. I was like, give me one more year. Let me finish out my term here. And so after that, I was elected to the board of directors for Quad A, where I was serving for a couple years. And my good friend, Crystal Cam, who's now in Florida, was the past president, or she was president at the time. And she's like, look, I really think the time is right and you need to step into this role. And I was like, well, I think I've got enough time. And I felt like I kind of was finally at that point in my life where I had enough time to dedicate to the organization to do it properly and to do it justice. And so I was like, well, let's jump in and see what I've gotten myself into. And it has just been so rewarding and so much fun to be involved. Yeah.
Awesome. And what does jumping in and giving it your full effort, what does that look like? Like I don't even have a picture painted in my head and what a Quad A president would do.
Right? There's a lot of emails.
Okay.
So usually by the time I get home from my 12-hour shift, I always tell everybody, I was like, I'm going to leave my full-time job and go home to my other full-time job.
Checking emails.
And checking emails. Right now, just this springtime of year, of course, it's exceptionally busier than the other 3 quarters of the year. We're in legislative sessions just about everywhere across the country.
Okay.
So there's something going on in New Mexico and Arizona and Washington and Georgia and South Carolina that all kind of have to pay attention to everything. So this is kind of our busiest time of the year, but we've actually it's a nice kind of executive committee set up the way we have it. So the president-elect, the president, and the immediate past president, the 3 of us kind of work together. So it's kind of a 3-year commitment when you sign up to do this. So last year I was president-elect with Crystal Cam and Laura Noblock. I'm the president right now with Laura Noblock and Danny Massaros from Michigan. Mm-hmm. And then next year I will be the past president with Danny Massaros and the president-elect that we'll elect in the fall. So it's kind of a 3-man job.
Okay.
Which is really, really nice because you've got the experience of the person who came before you, the new blood of the person who's coming behind you, and you're kind of the continuum in the middle. So it's a really kind of great setup that we have.
And this is all volunteer, correct?
All volunteer.
That's what I thought. I mean, that's a huge ask. I'm just really, is that what other professional societies do, that it's all volunteer?
Well, it's interesting, which I did not know until this past year. The president of the ASA actually buys out part of the president's FTE for the year.
Okay.
So you actually work for the organization.
Oh, interesting.
We're kind of we're not quite on that level yet. Could we be there in the next 10, 15 years? Probably, with the exponential growth that we're starting to see now, from 2 programs to 15, the number of CAAs will double by 2030. So we'll be probably 7,000 CAAs by 2030. So do you remember what your NCCAA number is?
I believe it's 881.
Okay, see, I'm right ahead of you. I'm like 768. I mentioned this to people and they're like, oh, your NCCA number is 3 digits? I was like, yeah, there were only 700 when I graduated. And now we're going to be 7,000 in the next few years, which is really exciting. So as we continue to grow in this way, I think that eventually this will become, a position that will require more and more time with the organization.
I wanted to ask you what you think the biggest hurdle to the CAA profession is, since you have such a, intimate knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes.
It's disinformation. And I really think that is the biggest problem is you have this other organization with such a loud voice, and their voice is so loud because of the number that they have and the economics that they can support.
And I just want to be clear, just for people listening, that we're talking about the AANA, which is the national organization in charge of certified registered nurse anesthetists. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, go on.
No, and you're totally right. So the AAANA, they just have such a loud voice. Yeah. And so we've probably all heard this testimony and we're like, that's not true. Or you read a Reddit subheading and you're like, but none of this is true. These are just false statements. I listened to Arizona last week and the lobbyist had conflated the CRNA education to 10 years. They're like, we have 10 years of anesthesia experience. And I'm like, but that's not true.
Yeah, sure.
And so I really think that's our biggest hurdle, is just trying to tell our story, our way, and make it heard. And, fighting this, political juggernaut of disinformation.
Do you think increasing our numbers best combats that disinformation? Like there's just a higher chance that someone's going to run into a CAA who's got the story right? Or do you think having, I think there's this conversation going on in our profession about all of these schools producing at the same time, and like, are we expanding too quickly and not keeping our the essence of who we are? I'm just curious if our exponential growth you think is going to solve this problem, or there's another layer behind and to that we need.
I think our exponential growth will definitely power a better argument, because to say, well, these guys have been around for 40 years and there's only 2,000 of them. If they're so great, why haven't they grown already?
I see.
And so now that I think we can get into this exponential growth, we'll be able to say, hey, we're here and we're here to meet the demand of the healthcare systems that are crumbling. Anesthesia providers are needed in all 50 states, in just about every system across the country. We can help solve that problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's where we can get into a positive message, not try to play the negative politics that I just don't think get us anywhere.
Yeah. So true. What do you think about our alignment with anesthesiologists and like our reliance on them and trying to stand on our own? Talk to me about how we're anesthesia care team providers, but also we need to kind of take responsibility for ourselves.
And I think that also comes with numbers.
Okay.
I think when we were smaller, and we have a symbiotic relationship with the anesthesiologist and the national organization. Our executive council of Quad A meets with the executive council of the ASA once a quarter.
Wow.
We have an in-person strategic planning once a year where we actually fly to Chicago for their board of directors meeting. And we sit around a table and say, hey, what are you guys working on? Hey, here's what we're working on. What can we do together? And how can we best promote the anesthesia care team together? And I think that's where we have our strength is by working together. And I'll tout the ASA. They've got some fights on a federal level that we could not even begin to take on ourselves. Surprise billing, Medicare reimbursement, the things that affect our paychecks on a daily basis. And so those guys deal with that. And I mean, we benefit from that, just as the physicians do. The flip side of that and the counter argument is, yeah, we always make the joke, we're not at the kids' table anymore.
I totally agree. Yes.
You know, we're at the grown-up table now. And to sit at the grown-up table, you either have to be at the table or you're on the menu. So we need to be reliant and be self-sufficient and not say, what's the ASA going to do for us? It's like, no, what are we going to do for our own advocacy? And so I think we've done a really good job of advocating for ourselves now with support from the physicians.
Yeah.
And not just depending on the physicians to do the work.
I'm happy that you say that because I do think with this exponential growth and even where we are right now, like we have to kind of stand on our own two big girl feet now, you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's really encouraging that the Quad A on a national level is pushing for that as well. I wanted to kind of shoot you my last closing question here, which is really getting at the why behind this podcast, which is using our CAA profession like on a personal level to live your best life. And I call it creating a life by design rather than default. And I'm just wondering how you see, or if you would agree with that statement, that the profession has done that in your life. Obviously, this is a very busy year for you, so maybe in the future.
Right. 3 years ago, I'd have been like, this is the best. I have all this time. I'm able to tailor my schedule. And so now I'm like, what's next? Okay, let's go. But it's great. I would not change any of it. And I think you're absolutely right. I think this profession allows us to live by design. And I don't think that you have to put a square peg into a round hole. I think we can all kind of find our niche, which I really, really like. And so I think that's kind of the great thing about CAAs is we find the niche that we like.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up liking cardiac. I was like, okay, cardiac, whatever. And I mean, I have just had the most successful, rewarding career. You know, everybody finds pediatrics or obstetrics or, you know, they really have a busy family life. I'm going to work at an outpatient facility where I don't have to take call. I think you can make this job what you want it to be and make this career fit you. And I think that's really a novel aspect.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the gig economy where people are wanting their work to fit their life, their other life, not work is life, this profession is like maybe the only medical career that fits that mold where you can kind of bend and twist and shape it at a high level. I think nurses do that. Yeah. The nursing profession, I think, does that, and they are absolutely first and foremost. But it's not quite at the level that maybe an anesthesia provider is, where you can work a 12-hour day and an 8-hour day and make enough money to have some of the flexibility in the other aspects of your life.
Absolutely. And you said it best with the gig economy. I mean, how many people do we all know who are working locums or contracts and they're going here and living for 3 months? And, you know, I wish that had been around 20 years ago because it would have been interesting to see what that lifestyle would have been like, you know, in your late 20s to I loved Albuquerque, New Mexico as a student. I can't imagine, living there for 3 months and working and experiencing the culture and then taking a job in St. Louis and, and getting to explore and live in different places. And as you said, at a high level.
Yes. Some may say that you're working the 12s and the 8s, a day of 12, a day of 8s, that is what primed you and got you enough energy to then self-sacrifice and be the Quad A president for 3 years, the 3-year run of it. So I'm wondering what do you think is next? I'm not a person who's like, oh, bigger, better, harder, faster, but I do think it is a natural human response to think about what's next. Have you thought about that for you after you kind of end your 3-year stint?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've thought about it, and I'm like, what's going to be my next project? I've gotten more and more involved in education over the past 10 years. So if an education pathway presented itself to me, I would probably go in that direction. I have such a great time with students and teaching and watching them grow. There's nothing better than taking students on their first day and they've got a laryngoscope handle and a blade, and they're like, what do I do with this? And now our first year students have been here for about 6 months, and they're telling me about their cases that they've done. And I put in an art line today, and then watching them become second years and watching them grow into the profession, and seeing the next generation of educators and advocates come behind us is probably one of the most rewarding aspects of this career. So I could see myself growing more into a role and, helping expand the profession that way.
Sure.
Because to grow, we've got to have more practitioners.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And high quality educators,
Yes.
to teach those practitioners. And I think hearing how to be a CAA from a CAA in the didactic world, like obviously you get that dynamic when you're in clinic, but then also getting that in the didactic world is more rare. I mean, I would say still we have more CAAs obviously working in the clinic, and fewer people have made that switch to do half and half, or, hey, my passion's really education, I'm going to put my energy there. I think we're moving to that as we get more numbers, more diversity, more flexibility. I just think that is such a powerful next step for our profession.
Absolutely it is. And I will even give you the flip side of that, and one better. The most valued educator is the CAA who takes a first year student. That's our rate limiting step to expansion.
Really?
Is having those clinical opportunities for the first year students. We all love second year students.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, you're graduating next month. Come on, buddy. This is great. But that first year student that you've got to be a little bit more hands-on, you've got to watch a little closer. That's how they learn.
Yeah,
and that's
patience.
how have patience. And that's where we have to start. So the CAAs who are great first year preceptors to me are like gold. They are really kind of they're the ones that are putting the pieces together.
Yes.
They're allowing the students the time to take this didactic concept that we've learned and we've simulated it now in the sim lab, but actually kind of putting it all together in the clinical environment.
Yes. And it's difficult. And, it's a bit of a thankless job. I mean, because you don't oftentimes a first year educator does not see the student their second and third year. And so
exactly,
it is a skill that you grow into, honestly, as a practitioner, that you get better and better at teaching as you go. And especially those first year students, it requires a special touch. And yes. So thank you to everyone who is doing that hard work. Yeah.
Absolutely. So those are the educators that and as you said, it's a thankless job, and they don't get enough credit for what they do.
Yep. This has been an extremely fun conversation. I'm so glad that we were connected. I would love to do a little rapid fire sort of fun round with you if you're up for that.
Okay.
So these are things that I would love to know about people. So hopefully others who are listening would feel the same. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I'm a morning person now. Anesthesia made me a morning person. I was a night owl to start with.
What time do you get up?
Oh, if I sleep till 7 o'clock now, I think I've wasted half my day. Cardiac starts early. So I'm typically up at, 5:30 at the very latest during the work week.
And if you're up at 5:30, what is your coffee order?
Venti soy latte from Starbucks. It's my bougie self-indulgent treat.
What would you do if you were not a CAA?
I think I would have found a place in medicine. I don't know what it would have been if I knew I did not want to be a PhD. I knew I did not want to go the basic science route after working in the lab for a few months. So I probably would have gone the PA route. I think I've always been interested in medicine, and I think I would have found some way.
Yeah.
Now, if that all crumbled and fell apart, I'd probably be a kindergarten teacher. I like little people. They're cute at that age.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you have little people at home?
I do not. I have four-legged little people.
Okay. Similar to the kindergarten experience, like the permanent kindergartner.
Exactly.
Okay, last question is, what's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love a good rainy day and some Netflix.
Yes.
And I don't feel like we ever slow down enough to just like sit and just take a do nothing day.
Mm-hmm.
And guilty pleasure and binge some Netflix.
That sounds good. It's kind of rainy and dreary here today. But...
Oh, yeah. You can see it's rainy and dreary here.
Yes, I see that. Oh, Jenn, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation. I hope everyone who is listening feels like they know our Quad A president a little bit better. And if you're going to the Quad A here, after this releases, you'll have about maybe 4 or 5 days to get packed up and go to the Quad A. Jenn, are you speaking at the Quad A? Where can people say hi to you or meet you?
I will be bouncing around the entire time. I do have the president's address on Saturday morning that kind of kicks off the meeting. But it's going to be such a fun meeting. I think we're going to hit 1,000 attendees.
Really?
Yes. Which is going to be our biggest. It's going to be our biggest conference yet. So I'm super excited about it. Friday, I saw you on the agenda for Friday speaking to the students. So Friday will be a day dedicated to the students and gearing some of these talks to more of things that the students are interested in at this point in their lives. And then Saturday we'll kick it off. I'll kick it off with the president's address. We always have an open board meeting. So the Quad A Board of Directors meeting will be open to anyone who would like to attend. You can sit in for the open session. There will be kind of a closed business meeting after that, but we invite everyone to kind of come and see how the board operates, to meet everyone who's on the board. I think people always picture the Quad A president, but there's our executive committees composed of 5 members and then 7 board members. So there's actually 12 of us.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And everybody will be in attendance. We'll all be around. We've got a couple of good social events on Friday and Saturday night. For those who have never been, or if it's been a minute, the student trivia is always kind of one of the most fun portions of the weekend on Sunday night. So we'll be around, and I would love to talk to as many people and meet as many different CAAs and students as I can while we're in Dallas.
And just a crazy time for impact when you're bringing a third of our profession into the same room. I mean, I don't know how many people go to the ASA and the AANA conferences, but we do have that kind of sweet spot now where we can make change because we can touch and impact and speak directly to a third of our population.
Exactly.
I just think it's such a powerful time for us. So yeah, I'm excited to get to be a part of it. I've not been to a Quad A since I graduated. So
really,
I'm very excited.
I think you will notice a big difference.
Yes.
from when you and I were students.
Exactly.
And how much we have grown. So I remember last year in Destin, it was our first in-person meeting since COVID. And we were just like, oh, this is incredible. Like this ballroom full of people. Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General, was there. And we were like, we're kind of a big
Yeah,
deal now.
yeah. We are at the big kids table.
We're at the big kids table, and it's so fun to say that, and to see the evolution of the profession.
Yes, I agree. I'm excited to be a part of it. I mean, I love our profession. I just know the power behind it in my own life. I've seen it in my dad's life. My brother is also a CAA, so this profession is just really near and dear to me, and I'm happy to be a part of our expansion right now. So Jenn, I really thank you for taking the time, kind of being so open, letting us get to know you really on a more human level. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, that'll be great. And thank you so much for doing this. What a great way to spread the message of the CAA profession and all of the different aspects involved in life.
Yep.
So.
I mean, that is absolutely my goal. So I'm glad that people are listening, and I'm glad that you agreed to let me ask you a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah, this has been great. It's been
good.
So fun.
Awesome, Jenn. Well, I will see you at the Quad A.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
If you liked this conversation and want to hear more like it, please leave the Awakened Anesthetist podcast a rating, and you can also write a little review that helps other people find the episode. It tells other CAAs or prospective CAAs why they should listen, what's helpful about it. And it's also great for me to get a little bit of feedback just to hear how the episodes are landing for you all. So I'd really appreciate you guys taking the time to write those ratings and review. And if you've already done so, thank you so much. I do see those, and it really feels good to get some feedback from you. All right. Till next time. Yay.
That was fun.
I know. See, podcasting is really fun. It's like unexpected. Like after you get through the first 15 minutes, you're like, okay, This is a little bit weird. We're like talking to a screen, and then you forget that you're there, and you're,
yeah, exactly.
It's cool.